welcome to Tunes, Winning the Mobile Moments. I'm going to go through this quickly. My name is Jonah-kai. I do two things. I talk fast, and I have a lot of information. I do that for a couple reasons, because I want people to, one, pay attention, and two, I like to give you a lot of data. So a lot of data in these slides. I've got about 45, 50 slides. I think I can do it in about 30 minutes. But the nice thing is you have these slides afterwards, so there's great things for you in there. This is me. Don't read it. I hate my hair. But if you tweet at me, or if you tweet about the session, if you fill out your things, we do have some cool things that we can send, that I will send you in the mail. Last time I did this, we sent somebody some really cool, what did we send them? We sent a little, swell bottle, things like that. So if you tweet at me, I'll pick one of you, you can win. So today, we're talking about the mobile moments. There's a lot of different things so I know the audience, we're talking about 5 kind of areas. We're going to deconstruct the mobile marketing funnel. We're going to kind of talk about how companies can win customers. We're going to talk about how you can do app engagement and retention. And then we're going to have some questions in here. Does anybody in here, who in here drives CPI campaigns for mobile downloads? Raise your hand. Who in here has a mobile app and you actually are trying to drive people to download your own mobile app? Awesome. And how long have you guys been doing that? 0 to 1 years? Raise your hand. 1 to 2? 2 to 3? Okay, good. How many of you use Tune or know who Tune is? Okay, great. Well, Tune is, just so everybody knows, we also have a company called Has Offers. Tune we basically do mobile measurement. In addition to, we have server-side or supply-side software that allows you to manage your ad network. So we work on both sides of the business. We allow you to manage your demand. How do I measure all the performance of my campaigns that I'm running? And then on the supply side, how do I manage all of my network? If I have traffic, CPI offers, basically tracker and measurement. So with that, we're going to jump into the kind of mobile marketing funnel. This is a traditional funnel. You've all seen this. I'm not going to bore you. We have awareness, interest, consideration, purchase. The mobile marketing funnel is much different, right? We kind of look at it as 3 phases. We have discovery, right? Discovery, how do you discover the app? We have conversion, is how are you going to get people to convert and use your app? And the most important part of this, and we'll see later, is engagement. How do you get people to actually engage and use your app, right? So if you look at the funnel, you can go from the top to bottom. How do you get down to the bottom of the funnel? And this is where you get what we talk about as your lifetime value, which is one of the things that mobile marketers care about most. Why does this matter? This year, marketers will spend about $33 billion on mobile app ad installs. That's a 35% increase. Does anybody in here know what the total digital ad spend in the US is per year? Guesses? Anybody? Say a number. 20 billion. Anybody else? 100 billion? Just a good guess. 70 billion, right? So 33 billion of the 70 billion that will be spent this year, 33 billion of it's mobile. 2 years ago, does anybody know what that mobile number was? How much mobile spend 2 years ago was there in mobile ad spending? $4 billion, right? So this is a significant market opportunity. It's where we see a lot of the mobile spend. Does anybody know what happened last quarter that Facebook announced something that was really interesting? They said in their platform that they didn't think that they were going to be able to grow and add any more ad units into their mobile platform because they'd reached mobile saturation, which I think is going to be interesting because that means basically when you're on your app, they can no longer find ad spaces they can deliver. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with mobile, especially since Facebook is one of the top ones. But interesting thing here, second acquisition, $3 to $10 is typically what we see. Some users will cost 10 to 15. And then another stat here you can see is 86 of app publishers who engage customers have a very significant lifetime value. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So we're going to talk about how to win. We're going to talk about how do you win these mobile moments. Mobile moments, it's a new concept. So this is something that we kind of worked. We did a lot of research with Forrester. They did a lot of research on this. So this data I'm about to present is from Forrester, but it's a very interesting concept, mobile moment. Mobile consumers are really demanding, and the reason is because with a mobile device, you can get anything you want at any given time. Global smartphone penetration, if you look, it's huge. If you look at these numbers right here, this is globally, but this is an interesting fact that South Korea, Australia, this is the smartphone subscribers as a percentage of total population by country. The other interesting thing about all of these countries, these are some of the top 10 digitally high ad spend countries as well. This was for 2015. For the US market, for 2015 to 2020, what you see is that unique smartphone subscribers are almost going to reach online population, which is an interesting thing as well, because it means that smartphones are going to be the driving demand behind people's usage of their basically their eyeballs. Interesting thing about consumers, what do they use apps for? Well, if you look at it, consumers use apps for everything, right? So this is a generational sharing of all the different categories, we call them, like mobile categories, and you can see the different types of generations, how they use them. They use them for different things such as mobile gaming, you have financial booking. The interesting thing is that you kind of see some differences there, but look at Generation Z. Does anybody know what Generation Z is, the ages? Yes? Millennials and below? That's going to be the audience that everybody wants, right? And so these people are super connected to their devices, and they use their devices for every single category out there. If you think about a lot of the big mobile industries right now, the big mobile industries are gaming was the first one, travel, e-commerce, right? But as you look down the path, there's going to be more and more of these as companies start to move online. So anybody that does work with brands, if you are a brand, if you have a mobile app, that's where they're going to be spending a lot of their money. Another interesting stat, people don't know that almost 88, so we know that people spend a lot of time on their phone, but 88% of people, their time on mobile devices is spent in apps. And of that, there's typically we like to say 5 to 8 apps that people actually use. 2 are probably from Facebook, 2 are probably from Google, 1 is going to be your email, and that leaves time for 1 or 2 others that are probably games. Some other stats here we have about the mobile moments is that 5.4 billion smartphones globally by 2020. Does anybody know what the world population is? A little over 8. I love stats. Anybody know how many people are in India? About 1.3. China? Over 2. US? 350 million, yep. About 126 minutes spent on a mobile phone per day. Who in here spends more than that? You're probably like, how many is that? An hour, 2 hours? Yeah? I spend a lot of time on there. Who spends less than that? Really? Good for you guys. Should talk to my son. 25, numbers of apps consumers use in a month. So if we think about that, let's think about the math. 25 apps they use in a month. How many apps did I say they typically use on a standard basis? 8, right? So that means there's a lot of churn, right? So as you talk about mobile, that's the biggest thing you'll find is getting people to install and retain your app is huge. It's important. 78% of the time is spent in apps. 1.5 million apps are available to consumers today. Right? It's huge. Mobile mind shift, right? And so what's happening, what we're seeing is we're calling these the mobile moments, right? So the expectation is that I can get what I want whenever I want it in immediate context. And so if you think about a map example. I used to have to download a map. I used to go use the map. I'd walk around with a piece of paper if I was in Vegas. I'd hope I'd know where I was. I hope I could triangulate with north and south. Like, what do you do now? Like, you jump in your maps, you put it in there, shows you recommendations, whatnot, right? So that was just in the last 2 or 3 years. But the interesting thing that brands that they have to think about is like, how are you going to win these mobile moments that people have, right? And the hardware, the technology, the mobile apps, the industry is moving forward, and that's all the tools and technology that people are trying to figure out now is how do you win and retain these mobile moments? Whenever I want a Starbucks coffee, how do I find it? Whenever I want a Starbucks coffee or I'm walking by a Starbucks and they know me and they pop it up, like they can find me. Does anybody in here use the Starbucks app? Yes? No? I think it's one of the best apps out there. When I park in my garage, my HR team hates me, so I have to walk 10 minutes to the office in the cold in Seattle in the rain. And I get out of the car and I go and I order my coffee at the Starbucks right next to my house. And I go there and I pick it up and I walk out. I don't even talk to the cashiers. I think Starbucks is one of the examples that you're going to start to see more and more of these companies trying to do that. So the concept that we have here is mobile moments. And all right. I think it jumped forward here. Sorry, this thing froze on me. So mobile moments are going to change. The interesting thing that we know is, apologize for that. It's the laptop's fault, it's not mine. Is that mobile moments are going to change, right? They're going to shrink into what we're calling micro moments or mini moments, right? So these micro moments are going to be, think about all the devices and things that are happening with us right now as you gauge with the different environments. I might have a headset on there, I might have VR, I might have AR. And are going to extend beyond the mobile phones, right? You see watches, you see clothing. Did anybody see CES last week? You kind of keep up with that? You see the technology that's coming out of there? It's insane what they're doing. Proactively, they're going to appear in context. They're going to be native. Like, so the native experience that you're going to see is going to be in your normal environment of what you're doing. Push notifications, interesting stat. Did you know that over 80% of the people, it's a thing that you have, that whenever you get a notification, either a text, an email, or a notification from a brand or something like that, it releases serotonin in your brain. And that's why people always walk around with their phones and they're looking at it, right? So if you go somewhere and you have a phone, I'm trying to be better at this by putting it down and putting it face down, and you see it, like notifications are a very interesting thing, and it's socially built into us to try and react to them. So these moments are going to change, and they're going to happen at an instant, and they're going to either appear, and you're going to catch it, or they're going to disappear into the ether, and they're going to be gone. What does it mean for you? It means marketing is going to get much harder, right? So if you think about the new experiences that are going to happen, you're going to have media evolution, Snapchat. Who in here uses Snapchat? Love it. Love it much more than Facebook. Who in here uses Twitter? Who in here uses Facebook? You guys are all pretty connected. So Snapchat's the one that everybody's using now. You should check it out. They're going to go public this year. They're going to be awesome. Touch points, right? You're now starting to get the connected home, right? The connected home they imagine is the next biggest battleground, right? So they have Google Home. You have Amazon Echo. I think that the next trillion-dollar company is going to be Amazon, Microsoft, or Google, simply because they have those connectivity. Not only do they have the apps, but they're also starting to go towards the home. And then you also think connections are going to evolve, right? So we also think that, we don't think about this, but another thing that drives this industry forward is connections. So you think about HDMI, you think about Wi-Fi, you think about things like that, right? As we talk about these mobile moments, the ability to be engaged with them. It means old tactics aren't going to work. We like to talk about the who, what, why, when, where, right? So old tactics, who to target, and online it was easy. It was kind of customer segmentation. In the mobile, you really have to speak to the individual. The what format, right? An online, think about the things you used to do there, right? You know, I have my newsletter sent out, I have my nurture campaign, I want to send it to you, it's a prefabricated message, it's going to come to you in a big bulk. Nobody engages with that anymore. It has to be personalized and it has to be available to them. When? It has to be triggered by an event. We used to have some sort of triggered event in our market automation or things like that. We'd know they'd do something, or an event was coming up like this, and I'd say, hey, I have to send an email, right? With mobile, you can actually engage with people in the real time in the same context of what they're doing something. Where? Any location you can typically do online, but like in mobile, the really unique thing is you can do it in an explicit location. That's important, right? How do I do it in the moment, in the time right now? Why? Proactive iterations, you typically would serve your business, you'd be kind of reactive with the customer service and things like that. But mobile also gives you the ability to be proactive in your communications with clients. All right, another fun stats. 44% of marketers today, this is something that Forrester released, marketers, they still fall into what they call the shrink and squeeze stage. The shrink and squeeze stage is what I think, what they define as a company is, I just go out and I take my current tactics and I throw those over to mobile, and I hope that they're going to work, or I put those into the mobile world, and that's what I do for my campaigns, and it doesn't work, right? So 44% of the companies are doing today, they're treating mobile like they do today with their desktop and old advertising. 20% have budget that they need to support their mobile initiatives, which is up from about 5 to 10 last year. 55% still say that they're experimenting with mobile, right? That's one of the biggest things with mobile is the experimentation of this platform and trying to figure out how it works. You really do have to truly experiment. And only 35% think that they have mobile best practices in place, right? If you think about desktop and online marketing, you ask that question, it'd probably be like in the 80s or 90s. Like everybody has best practices that they follow. If you want a lot of best practices, Tune has tons of them. You can find me after this. We're happy to share them. Tech radar, right? So this is an interesting thing. Tech radars are kind of patented that Forrester looks at, and this looks at what is going to happen in the next several years. The interesting thing for me is that if you look down in the lower right, the easiest way to think about this is blue is successful, gray is not, red is minimal. The time to reach, the things you want to look at is how many little arrows they have pointing to the right. That gives you an idea about time, right? So mobile advertising analytics, Tune, we're in that space, it's good. Significantly success, customers that have it, and there's a long longevity of it, 3 to 5 years, right? And so you think of, if you look at the left, look at all these new technologies that are coming out here. How many people know about every single one of these technology platforms that are up on this slide? Raise your hand. Can you read them? No. Augmented reality, location intelligence, mobile engagement, cross-device targeting, mobile advertising platforms, in-app engagement platforms, mobile web platforms. These are all within the last 1 or 2 years. These are new technologies that come out. Like, there's so many new technologies out there. So we've talked about all this stuff. Now I'm going to run through app discovery and conversion for you guys to kind of learn kind of how it works. Thinking of mobile apps we most recently used, how did you first learn about this app? I think it's interesting here as we talk about discovery, right? If we go back to the mobile marketing funnel, the first thing you have to do is discovery. How do you get people to discover your app? Search in the App Store, 26%. Website prompted me, or recommendations by a friend, right? The other interesting thing about the mobile world is, where are the two places you can download apps today? Google, Apple, right? And they own those app areas. So if you think about it, they control the keys to this. How would we do advertising before? You'd work with a publisher, you'd have 5,000 sites, you'd have all this traffic, you could stuff ads everywhere, people would be able to do all the different things they want. The two hardware providers own those things. Another interesting thing is, I'll talk about this later, everybody see what WeChat announced like 3 days ago? WeChat announced that they now can let people use their app in line of a mobile web page, so they're delivering the app experience without having to go to the Google Play Store or the iTunes Store, which is interesting because one of the things that they struggle with, all these big companies that have massive audiences struggle with, is how do I get more people to learn about my app? And if you can't beat the game that is pushing people to the App Store, Google or iPhone, then they're going to figure out ways to do it themselves. So I think it's going to be very interesting. We talk about a concept where we call the convergence of mobile web and apps, and we think it's going to happen quicker than this, and that really is where the mobile web, I do think that the web itself is going to take we had this big shift to mobile. I think the web is going to take a much more dominant role in what happens over the next 2 years. Google announced the ability to actually start streaming apps. They're trying to test that out, right? So the ability, but what does that open up, right? That opens up our ability to get out of the shackles of the two app stores to get people to use your app. If I can only get people to find my app by searching in the App Store or recommending, how many apps did I say there was? Like 1.5 million? Like, how's anybody ever going to find an app? Right? So I think the interesting thing that's going to happen over the next year and a half is we're going to see this convergence of the mobile web and the browser, and it's going to be a lot more like this kind of app environment where we can engage with it. Talk about app acquisition. There's really two ways you can get it. You either pay to play or you get organic. If you're paying to play, there's different things. These are kind of best practices for you to look at. Choose the right channels, right? You can have digital media campaigns. You can focus on ad networks, search engine marketing, paid social. Some of the best practices we talk about: monitor each of your channels, right? So Tune, we measure the ability for you to measure the performance of your campaigns and see how you acquire users. On the supply side, we have Has Offers, allows you to track and measure the different types of campaigns that publishers you're working with, affiliates you're working with are there. Make sure that you're paying on goals, or you're paying on goals if you're an advertiser, or you're working with publishers that have goals. And then test different types of ad partners out there. There's some different traditional media campaigns like talk about. You can do some interesting things here. We do see a lot of the apps that are really good. If you go to New York and you see that, like Snapchat, like they have all the big yellow billboards everywhere. So there's a lot of really cool things that they're doing with kind of traditional media to kind of back that in. Why app optimization? Organic acquisition is one of the most important things that you can do if you have an app in the App Store. We have lots of best practice on this, but about 60% of your downloads will come from organic downloads, right? You'll be able to get some paid in there, but if you think back to the numbers I talked about, paid can cost you anywhere from 3 to 5 per install, or sometimes up 10 to 50 depending upon. So it's not you can't just continue to buy users. So you have to make sure that you have organic acquisition in place. It allows you to use your search bar or your search app store. It shows target intent. It's much more sustainable in the long term. It has a higher ROI. And if you look over here on the left, you can see App Store search, direct. What does the last one say there? Can't read my slides anymore. But that kind of shows you organic is App Store search is one of the huge ways that you can drive volume to your apps. Some best practices for organic acquisition is watch your rankings. It's much like SEM. Any of you do campaigns out there, right? You go in there, you have descriptions, you have ratings, you have reviews, you have keywords you can search on. So it's very similar to SEM, but it takes a unique person that can go in and focus on this. It's one of the things that the tool here you can see is one of our things. We can look at you can track your competitors, you can see how things are trending. Ratings and reviews, these are very important. Remember, we go back to that previous slide, we talked from Forrester, and I think it was like 40% of the people download based on reviews or recommendations by friends. So you'll see a lot of the app developers out there as well. They all build in a really good gamification model where they're trying to get people to share that app to get people out there, right? The best apps that are the most lucrative are the ones that are very engaging, and they want you to engage with others, and the others want to engage with you. Keywords, right? Choose the right keywords. So this is similar to SEM. If you're doing keyword targeting, make sure you have the right keyword strategies in place. Track your competition. This is a really kind of a unique thing about the App Store is that you can get some really good information about your competition and what they do, the keywords they use. We have a tool called App Store Analytics, which basically what is called ASO, App Store Optimization, and we allow customers to track all of their information through that product. And then conversion, when a user signs up, you can see an interesting thing here. So I talked about the convergence of mobile web and mobile app. So there is mobile web and there is mobile app, and there's different ways that conversions happen. But when a user signs up, you want to make sure that you are tracking that stuff, measuring it, seeing what's performing, and then working with the partners that you're leveraging to make sure they drive more similar people like that. Measuring impressions and app installs, optimizing on a cost per install and cost per click basis. So this is attribution. So the interesting thing about mobile, the nice thing about mobile as well, is it allows you to measure attribution much more effectively than digital, simply because a lot of the touch points that happen all happen digitally in the mobile. We can do postbacks so that whenever we talk about cost per install, like think about cross-device in a mobile environment, it's really hard to track how people engage. And so the great thing about mobile is you can actually attribute all of the installs per different channels that you drive. Understanding multi-touch versus latch touch. This is kind of another best practice for people if you're looking at this. Last touch, basically, if you do a last touch model, you're attributing based on the last impression the user clicked. Multi-touch, typically what happens, most people do, and this is, if you look at the example, publisher 1, they have an ad, it was clicked 3 days ago. Publisher 2, drove 1, it was clicked 1 day ago. The install tracked, but as an advertiser, I'm going to give some level of credit to each one of them, and you can change those things. 5 minutes? Okay. Sorry about my technical mishap. I'll keep going. Deep links. How many people in here use deep links? This happened about last year ago. Does anybody know what deep links are? Raise your hand, show. Great. Deep links, Toon Team does not count. Deep links are amazing technology that happened about a year ago. And before, if I drove an ad and I showed you something or I showed you a discount and you clicked on that, it would take you to the App Store. And if you didn't have the app, you would have to install the app, but you lost the action the advertiser was trying to employ. Some sort of a discount or something. So deep links gives you the ability to push people to different stages of the app, and if they don't have the app, it'll allow them to install it, and then it'll take them to the page or whatever you're trying to offer to them. I think the interesting thing that we're going to see this year, we're working with some customers that are doing what we're calling universal links now, where they can basically parse out any portion of their app, and they can do any different things in there, and you can now drive people directly into the apps with also circumventing the App Store, right? So we talk about trying to get out of the App Store. I think this year will interesting to see how advertisers can move away from the Google and the Apple iStore installation and try and taking people directly to their apps. Retention of users. We'll talk a little bit here. App users are fickle. I think it was a great slide from Forrester, but thinking of mobile apps you've recently stopped using or recently deleted from your phone, what was the primary reason? 41% said they were no longer useful, 22% they did not work properly, did not meet expectations, did not recently delete an app. The thing here about app users is you have to make sure if you have an app that the engagement and the environment that you're delivering to them is spot on. Like people have a very limited time. Does anybody remember the stat from a web page? I think it was, does anybody know how long does it take for you to stop and leave a web page if it stops loading? Does anybody remember that stat? Huh? It's like 3 seconds, right? It's the same thing in the mobile. If I go in there and I can't do the action that I wanted or I'm not delivering value to my users, they're just going to delete it. We have this in-app lifecycle we like to talk about for the mobile. It's a little bit different here, but you have discovery, explore, buy, use, ask, engage. Really good apps cover this whole spectrum. They have pieces of the app that are specifically focused on this, and there's a component of it that delivers value at each one of these so they can retain their users. So why do we care, right? So by optimizing your experience, you can deliver relevant content. So on the lower left, 13% of users delete an app without ever opening. 22% of users try an app once and then delete it. 11% of users try an app and forget about it. 34% of users try an app and use it occasionally. If you add those up on the far right, 67% of installs can be converted into long-term value customers if you can deliver on the engagement and making sure that they get the value out of the app that they want. Right content, right people at right time. Conversions are more likely happy when you connect with them with relevant, personalized ads. Like this is kind of standard marketing, right? Right person, right place, right time. But this kind of little flow down here will show you kind of like how we think about mobile and how you get user to take action and come back and be a long-term paying customer. Something else we like to talk with our customers about is get to know your users. A lot of people don't do this, but there's a lot of data on the users and making sure that you're segmenting your users into the right audiences, demographic, histographic, data like that. Like the great thing about mobile and some of the other technologies out there is you get really rich data on people, especially if they're logging into any of your platforms. Push notifications. This is also a pretty interesting thing. I think that this will also be one of the big things that happens this year. If you think about, this is a technology that Tune have, it's called in-app messaging. If you think about what happened previously, people just wanted to get installs, right? And a lot of people cared about CPI. Now what's happening is people don't care about the install, they care about the engagement, right? And so some customers that we work with, if I'm an open table, I don't care about the install, I wanna know if somebody booked a table using my app, right? And so now what we're seeing is push notification and these other technologies are starting to pop up where people are actually engaging with the app and the advertisers are demanding that people do that. A lot of publishers we work with also are delivering campaigns that drive to this, right? So they're paying out only if they're delivering customers to them that take the action that they want. A/B testing of successful, right? A/B testing is kind of a similar thing, but this is also something that is not new, but a lot of people haven't really employed it much in the mobile world. I think this will be another big technology that takes off this year. And finally, some of the top KPIs for you to measure if you're looking at mobile is opens interactions, event completions through remarketing or retargeting campaigns as well. We talk about remarketing, retargeting are those in-app events, so it's kind of like marketing automation. It's like how do you re-engage with them? Also things we look at are days active since last click, opener event, and that also says the length of the customer that I cut off with my image, I'm sorry. All right, I had to go fast, I'm sorry for the technical. If you guys have any questions, I think we have, this room clears at 4. Does anybody have any questions? You can yell it at me too.
Well, I think that works. This works better for other people. Why is all the focus on mobile apps and not mobile web? This is the second year in a row I've come to this conference looking for information on mobile web, and like all anybody wants to talk about is mobile app.
It goes back to that original slide I showed you, where statistically there's just not eyeballs on the mobile web, right? So 80% of your time in your mobile app is spent in the apps. And so marketing typically focuses and follows that. There's not a ton of people on the mobile web. I think of myself, I'm a pretty heavy user. The only thing I really use the mobile web for is if I go on, and it's just because the mobile web experience, in my opinion, is broken. I think the mobile web, there's only a few companies out there that do it really well.
So my question about that, the follow-ups, nobody else is in line. 50 to 55% of my website traffic is mobile. And I think that's true for a lot of people, 60s, even 70%, depending on what it is. So I still don't get, like, as a company or as a publisher, I need to figure out how to best serve mobile customers. I'm not the only one. There are millions of us. So I don't understand why or where are the resources for us for this market? Is there a market for us, or are we just kind of out figuring it out for ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes. I think it's a great point. About 50% of our traffic's mobile too. I will say that I forget what the stat was, but I think the problem with brands and that people forget is that they make the mobile web experience horrible, right? And if you go to the website and the mobile device, the experience is bad. Now, do I think there's opportunity if you have a mobile web-enabled experience that is good and you can drive conversions and can drive people to that? Absolutely. And it's probably even one of those low-hanging pieces of fruit that you can find to drive some extra value there. But I just think that traditionally the model and the eyes, like the people focus on the in-app experience because that's where people spend most of their time. And I think that as we talk about the kind of convergence of mobile web and apps, I really do think that the technology, right? I think we're on like HTML 5.0. I think that they're pushing forward. Some of the browser technologies that we'll see this next year are going to try and make that app experience much better. And my time's up. But if you want to ask me questions after this, I'm happy to chat. Thank you all for coming. Sorry about the technical issues.